Title: The Greatest Regret of My Life. I still remember that first day of fasting. She had come to me, carrying a small child in her arms. She stretched out her hand in front of me and said, "My child is hungry. Please give me something to feed him, and I will pray for you." Hearing her words, I mockingly replied, "If your prayers had so much power, you wouldn't have to beg me for food for your child." She looked at me in surprise and simply asked, "Are you a Muslim?" Then, in a whisper, she answered herself, "You must be." Her question made me angry. I pushed her, and the child slipped from her hands, falling to the ground. She also fell. The child, already crying from hunger, who knows for how many days, began wailing even louder. She quickly got up, picked up her child, and saw blood coming from his head. Sitting down right there, she took her scarf and wiped the wound. Then, without hesitation, she removed her scarf and tied it around his head to stop the bleeding. When I saw her without a scarf, even in my state of fasting, my evil intentions took over. I said, "If you want my help, come and see me tonight. I will give you enough to fill your and your child's stomachs." Perhaps she sensed my vile intentions and said, "If earning a livelihood by disobeying Allah was my way, then I wouldn't have to stretch out my hand in front of you. If my fate and my child's fate include dying of hunger, I would rather die hungry than disobey Allah's commands to accept food from you." As we stood there, I noticed a crow with a large piece of bread in its beak. Another crow was trying to snatch it. In their struggle, the crow with the bread landed on an electric wire. The other crow pounced again, causing the bread to fall right next to the woman I had just pushed. She didn't pick it up immediately but waited to see if the crows would come back for it. But they flew away, still fighting. She then recited, "Bismillahirrahmanirrahim," in the name of Allah, the most gracious, the most merciful, picked up the bread, dusted it off, and began feeding her child. As she fed her child, she looked at me and smiled. Her smile was laced with irony, as if she were saying, "See, my Lord has given me the food you wanted to trade for sin without any effort." I stepped forward and kicked her hard. She fell again. People around us stopped and watched. But no one dared to question me because of my status and power. The child and the bread slipped from her hands. But she only said, "May Allah guide you." She picked up the bread and her child once more and resumed feeding him. Years passed. Time passed and I became poor and weak. I became a burden to my own children, the same children for whom I had spent my entire life working hard, amassing wealth, giving them all kinds of freedom. If ever we had to face hunger, I bore it myself. But never let my children sleep on an empty stomach. But when the time came for them to care for me, they turned away. They threw me out of my home. They accused me of vile things. If I had stayed with them, perhaps they would have declared me a sinner, issued a fatwa against me, or maybe even killed me and called it a natural death. None of my children wanted to see my face. I had no choice but to leave. My relatives and friends refused to take me in. And so, here I am today, begging in the same streets where I once ruled. The very place where I had businesses, lands, and wealth now taken away by my children, who sold everything and moved to big cities, building their own lives. If someone asks about me, they must say, "Our father died long ago." Today, when I stretch out my hand for help, and someone speaks harshly or scolds me, my past flashes before my eyes. One I pushed so hard that her child fell and she collapsed. I remember her words, "If earning a livelihood means disobeying Allah, then it is better to die of hunger." Her words give me some peace, some comfort. But if someone asked me today, "What is the greatest regret of your life?" I would break down in tears and say, "If only on that day I had given all my wealth in the path of Allah and handed it to that woman. If only on that day I had fed that woman and her hungry child. Maybe today I wouldn't have to sleep on an empty stomach. Maybe I wouldn't be facing this test of fate. But my time has passed. Now I have nothing to give anyone except my prayers. And no one even wants the prayers of a beggar like me. Believe me, Allah can change time in an instant. If today you are in a position of power, show mercy to His creation. Treat those in need with kindness. Believe me, if you are kind to the needy, you will never be in need yourself. I have seen countless examples of this. But if you have everything, yet you refuse to help the creation of Allah, if instead of sharing their burdens, you increase their suffering, then your fate will be no different from mine. May Allah protect everyone from facing a fate like mine. May He keep us all in His mercy and safety. Ameen, thumma ameen. The end. Dear readers, this time, instead of giving your charity and donations elsewhere, give them to us, so we can help struggling families while preserving their dignity. A desperate family needs your support to receive food supplies. Your financial help is urgently needed. I will be waiting for your help.